Coming up next on Headline Humboldt, we interview Eureka's new mayor-elect Kim Bergel to discuss her recent political past, as well as her vision for the city and how she plans to approach officiating the city council. Also, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission voted this week to allow the removal of the notorious Klamath dams and set in motion an ambitious restoration effort on the ailing Klamath River. Coming up now on Headline Humboldt. From the top of Humboldt Hill, this is Headline Humboldt. I'm James Falk. Thanks for joining us. Out of a significant defeat in an effort to secure a seat on the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors, where she lost against fellow Councilwoman Natalie Arroyo, Eureka City Councilwoman Kim Bergel didn't retreat into a quiet corner to nurse wounds or languish in her personal disappointment. She immediately transferred her energies into another direction, one that would enable her to continue her public service career. She ran to replace outgoing Eureka Mayor Susan Seaman. In this race, she ran unopposed and cruised to an easy victory. In so doing, she demonstrated poise and strength, the very characteristics that promised to serve her well as the Eureka City Council's master of ceremonies and most prominent political voice. A passionate and committed leader, Bergel has demonstrated time and again a level of commitment and seriousness that stands out in elected city government. She joins us now in the studio to discuss her plans moving forward. Thanks for joining us, Kim.
Thanks for having me.
How are you today?
I'm great.
Great. Thanks for coming down here.
Yes.
So now, you started out wanting to be supervisor, and then that race went the way it did, and then you decided to run for mayor. Some people might view it as, or have a concern that it's like a consolation prize. How do you respond to that?
Oh, I 100% don't believe that.
Yeah.
I really think things work out the way that they're supposed to, and I'm really looking forward to working with Supervisor Arroyo in some of the things that I'm really passionate about.
Yeah.
Mental health is huge, and it's a big problem in our region, not having enough services, and so having that connection with county, I think, is going to be critical moving forward in the new position.
Now, so you've had an opportunity to observe that role for a while, because you've been on the council for a long time.
Almost 8 years.
Yeah. So what do you think a good mayor needs for that position? What kind of skills are important to both, manage the meetings and make sure they're efficiently moving forward, but also make sure that the citizens feel like they're being heard?
I think that respect is very important. Regardless of what position you're in, and as mayor, that'll be something that I bring forward.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's been an environment of divisiveness in the meeting, and I feel like it keeps people away from coming to the meeting, that they don't feel confident sharing because, perhaps somebody will catcall them or yell or just be inappropriate
Negative.
with them. And so that's something that I really want to continue to work on. Mayor Seaman has done that, and I plan to continue carrying that on and looking at all kinds of different opportunities to make that happen.
Yeah. There was a time when I was first learning how to do this business that Eureka was considered the staid, civilized council, and then if people wanted shenanigans, they'd go to Arcata. But that seems to have changed in the last 10 years or so. It seems like people have gotten a lot, whether more aggressive or more critical, often threatening or belittling the council members at times. What drives that, do you think? I mean, could you point to anything in the community or in the broader national conversation that has made it so that it's more toxic in the chambers?
I think it's fear. It's that simple. I think people are afraid. I think that there are reasons that people feel afraid. I think that's national, that's statewide.
Sure.
There are a lot of things that have shifted and changed that we don't have all the solutions for. And that's why it's so important to have people engage in a healthy, respectful way, because coming all to the table and bringing our ideas, we can work together we may not agree on everything, but we can work together from a place of understanding that this is what we want. You may want to go here this way, you may want to go this way, but let's build together and create a better future. And I think that what happens is people get afraid, or they single out one issue or one person instead of really looking at the complexities of what many of these issues really look like. I mean, if they were so easy to fix, they would have been fixed.
Absolutely.
You know.
They're all complicated and involve lots of history.
Absolutely.
And passion, you know.
Yeah.
So how would you, how would you describe the job of mayor? And for people at home, what's the difference between a council member's job and the mayor's job?
Mm-hmm. So as the mayor, I will be presiding over the meeting, which I have done off and on for the last 5 years. I've been mayor pro tem for Frank Yeager, before Susan, and then Susan this time.
And so the pro tem officiates meetings when the mayor's not there?
Yes.
Okay.
And follows through with mayor's duties when the mayor isn't available. So I'll go to different meetings that the mayor, well, now I'll go to different meetings that the mayor goes to.
Because you're the mayor.
Before that, I would go to meetings that the mayor wasn't able to attend. Ribbon cuttings are another piece of that. And just really work with engagement.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that, I think Mayor Susan Seaman got a lot of credit for was we were in the pandemic, and there was a need, I think, for there to be a unified city voice to talk and reassure folks, in the city that the city was being as respectful and as proactive as possible in addressing those situations. What can you learn from her term in office that you can bring forward in terms of how you're going to approach it? Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I will do is I will continue carrying office hours, 4:15 to 5:15 on Mondays. She currently does 4 to 5, but I don't get off work until 4.
Sure, yeah.
Generally. And I really appreciated the videos during the pandemic. I ended up doing a couple of those myself as pro tem.
No,
as pro tem.
We ran a few.
Oh, did you?
You did one. Yeah.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Okay. So we. So I've had that experience. I don't know that currently is something that we will carry on with, but I do try and connect with the community through my Facebook live stream and get people involved in what's happening and what they can participate in and all of those things, which I think are really important.
Yeah.
And the other thing as mayor and as a councilwoman, I've really worked hard and will continue to meet people where they're at, whether that's in Old Town at a dance or whether that's in the marsh or whether that's at a city council meeting or Board of Soups meeting.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to go to people.
Yeah.
And be available.
As an outside observer, I would say that that's one of the most noticeable things about your service so far is that when there's an event, you're most likely going to be there. Maybe not the council members will be there, but you're often at the scene of things as they're happening, whether it's just as an interested observer or as a representative of the city. And I think that that is important. So, so you ran for supervisor, and then now you're mayor, which is, it's an honor in its own right. Are you still thinking that at some point in the future you might want to be supervisor? Or, you're young in your political service, so that's something you have lots of time to consider also. Have you thought about it?
Actually, I've decided that just like when I ran for supervisor, I'm just going to do what's in front of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so when I ran for supervisor, I ran because I think that working through some of these issues with mental health and some of the issues in our city are critical, and I did not want to be out of public service.
Yeah.
So I ran, and I got to carry out a lot of the I got to bring attention to a lot of the things that are very important to me, and again, mental health is a huge piece of that. And so as mayor, I'm going to be able to, because that just kind of was serendipitous how that happened.
Yeah.
I'll continue to do that, and then what's next will be next.
Yeah. Sort of what happens. It's like
everything works out the way it's supposed to. Yeah, for sure.
Now, you've mentioned mental health twice now. Is there anything in particular about that subject that you were planning to move forward now that you have this position?
Yes, I'm going to actually work together with people to create a mental health initiative. I've been talking to people about this. The city of Eureka has been working on this for a while. We currently have hired somebody to oversee some mental health, as well as we're looking for 2 clinicians right now to work with the police. I think that there's a lot of programming that we can do, and the county does do the stuff, but currently it's just we need more. It's not that things aren't happening, because they absolutely are, but we need more of that. And so working with groups like NAMI, working with EPD, county mental health, and those types of things to bring awareness, because COVID certainly has exacerbated the problem of mental health issues. And mental health doesn't discriminate. It's not just something that we see on our streets. And I want to be clear about that, because a lot of times I think people really feel like, well, mental health issues are what we see when we walk through a particular area in town. And the concerns for me are more that, but also the people that are behind closed doors that are depressed and suicidal and don't know how to get the help they need, or feel stigmatized and are unwilling to reach out.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, as we just had a showing last night of on Wednesday of our new documentary on suicide. And I think that the more that we can lift that stigma and allow people to seek help when they need it rather than being ashamed of it, I think that's very important.
100%.
Yeah. Now, 10 years ago, before you decided to run for city council, did you ever think that you'd see yourself sitting in the mayor's seat? Or,
No.
I mean,
No. It was interesting. I got on the Transportation Safety Commission. That was my first commission because my kids were young, and I was riding my bike all over town with them, and I was so frustrated with my safety riding around with my kids, and so that's how that kind of ended up. And then from there, just things started to unfold for me, and I've been involved since that commission.
Yeah. I mean, and it's been a sort of a meteoric, career so far. So the sky's the limit, I suppose. Mentioning your children, I wonder what they have felt about all of this. I mean, like, especially the fact that you took what was a defeat and turned it into this second chapter. Did they want you to run for mayor after the supervisor's race, or did they have any thoughts on that regard?
So So what ended up happening is I ended up talking to the mayor about it. We discussed her not running, and she had thought that I might be willing. So yes. So I explained to her that I did need to talk to my children first, and both of them were I just love. I mean, who doesn't love their kids? But I just absolutely adore my kids. And my son said, "Well, of course you're going to run, Mom. Of course you are." And I thought, of course I am. Of course I am. And they're very supportive, both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we had you on the show once before, and we were talking about some sort of that like bad energy or criticism that's been fermenting, and some of that was directed at your family.
Yes.
And
yes, it was.
So I think that underscores how how strong your kids sound to be able to be like, yeah, Mom, go for it, even though there has been some issues with ugly personalities or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So now, what do you think is going to be one of the first things that you looked at? You mentioned mental health. Is there anything else that you're going to try and put forward in terms of an itinerary?
Yes.
Off the bat?
So a few things. So I really want to focus on mental health, which I think is going to be a big boon in creating safety for people. And I also will be looking at opportunities to create transportation safety in our region. I'm so dismayed, that's an understatement, by all the people that are getting hit on Broadway.
Yeah.
So really delving into that. And then the other piece of it is going to be civility. I really, I feel like there's a specific decorum that needs to happen in our council meetings, and I believe just in conversations.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so looking at ways to move forward with creating those conversations in a way that are respectful.
Yeah.
I mean, we can agree to disagree, and that is totally fine, 100%. That's how we grow and how we learn.
Yeah.
But calling people names and demeaning them because, I got a post the other day with somebody in front of one of the utility boxes, with their pants down. And it's like, why do we have to exploit these people? Why can't we look for the solutions that are going to bring forward a better community?
Yeah.
You can send me that picture as a joke. It's not funny.
Yeah.
And so really trying to delve into not the freedom of speech of it all, but really looking at how can we change the narrative of how we see each other. Because right now there's just an element that really is very vulgar, rude, and mean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. On that topic of like the sort of the vulgarity and the anger that's been going on, I mean, you mentioned fear. Is there anything in particular, whether it's economic concerns or is it cultural concerns, people thinking that they're losing something? I mean, what do you have any thoughts on where? I mean, it's just everywhere, I guess, but.
I really haven't been able to pinpoint what that might be.
Yeah.
Some of the behavior is attention seeking.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's almost a catch-22, because the more attention we pay to it, maybe we encourage it, but at the same time, you can't just let it stand, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that certainly is the
battle.
paradox, isn't it?
And well, that's what we've been facing nationally too.
Yes.
You know, in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
I had the new chief of police on the show not too long ago,
Yes.
and he was talking about how the city has been working, you know, to sort of function as a way to divert people who are either mentally ill or homeless and get them into social service programs and stuff. And there's been various programs to do that. And he talked about maybe diverting, like those programs should be just a part of what the police do, and that there should be more of a partnership with like social service organizations to do some of that. Do you think that represents a change in direction for the city, or would you like it to continue with the way CSAT has been working up until now, where it's almost an autonomous part of what the city police do?
I think it's important to continue to build on what's working. So looking at different ways to increase the productivity and mostly the connection with people. I think any idea is worth trying, as long as it's civilized, of course. But any idea is worth looking at and making those changes. And honestly, I'm really looking forward to this idea of the city. You know, cities don't generally have mental health areas in there that work in the city. And so I'm really looking forward to what that's going to look like. And you know, we are a very innovative city. When I go to conferences, I listen to other cities and what they're working on, and we're so far ahead of the game oftentimes. And so I look forward to, again, being hopefully a role model to other cities of how we can make these things even better.
Yeah. When you said mental health initiative, do you mean an actual initiative to put in front of voters?
No.
So an effort.
An effort, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just an effort to really focus on, again, education, reducing stigma, and finding supports for folks on the whole spectrum of the issue.
Now, talking to the police chief, I mean, do you have any thoughts about what his tenure has been like so far? He mentioned that the Citizens Review, you know, Commission, or whatever the proper term is starting to get its feet under it. Have you had experience with that, and what do you think about that process so far?
You know, I know that it's changed. We voted for it to change.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I haven't been to one of their meetings yet, to be honest. I really do like the new police chief. I think he's doing a fabulous job. He's got the respect of his people. He's got the respect of the community. And he's very engaged and involved and available. All things of which I think are important in a public servant.
Absolutely. The topic of homelessness has been one that you've been engaged with several times. And I personally appreciate that engagement. There was recently an issue where they moved a homeless camp from behind the I don't want to say old folks home, but no, what's the name of the place? Silvercrest, thank you. There was a camp past Silvercrest, and they moved some folks out. And a lot of people are like, you know, we have these situations where we're constantly moving homeless people from place to place, and there's no real answer for it, you know, because they have to sleep somewhere and have to stay somewhere. And by kind of just shoving the problem from place to place isn't really an answer, but we have to do something. What are your thoughts on what the city has been able to do so far with some of its initiatives on helping the homeless, with its partnership with Betty Chen and that sort of thing? Is there more that can be done in that regard?
There's always more that can be done. There's always more that can be done. But again, I would say that I'm very proud of our city and their willingness to step up. You know, we have the Uplift program now, which works with homeless individuals to help them in many ways: housing, ID, Pathways to Payday is a program to help folks get to work. Partnering with Betty, those trailers will be coming on soon. That'll be more housing. You know, just creating opportunities for people to access services, I think, is critical. Now, I think the thing to really remember, and this is an important one, is that we cannot manufacture a willingness.
Absolutely.
We cannot make somebody be willing to take services or to change their lives if they don't want to, whether that's addiction or whatever that might be. We have a navigation center coming on board. The mission is being redone. You know, the women's shelter is being remodeled so that it will be able to have more people. So we're continuing to build, we're building more affordable housing. We're continuing to move in a direction to create more opportunities for people.
Yeah.
And in the interim, we're out in the trenches,
Yeah.
many of us, connecting with people and offering what is available now.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate our team. I appreciate our Uplift, our CSET, our officers, even our Humboldt Bay Fire, all these folks who are out there, and there's a lot of agencies and just people that are out doing this kind of work all day, all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. We have 1 minute left,
Okay.
but real quick, the council's changed as well, with, a little bit, it seems
Yes.
like. Although maybe it's too early to tell, I don't know, but it looks like G. Mario Fernandez may have cinched that ward seat, although it's really, really close. How much does that affect the mayor's job in terms of the makeup and personality of the council that you're going to be overseeing?
Well, I think that, again, respectful dialogue is important.
Yeah.
And so as long as we keep the personalities and stay with the principles of what's going on, we're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And I think that that's important on all levels, is that instead of addressing, and that's what my hope would be, is that instead of addressing personalities all the time, that we really look at the principles, we look at the ideas, the things that are happening, and talk and work from there.
Yeah, like my grandma used to say, from your lips to God's ears.
There you go, 100%.
All right, we'll be right back after this short break.
Is there a program you'd like to watch again? Maybe a performance you didn't get a chance to see? Well, now you can with PBS Passport, a terrific member benefit that lets you stream more than 1,000 hours of PBS and local programming on your computer or through the PBS app on your phone, tablet, smart TV, or streaming device. All your favorites wherever, whenever you want. And with your qualifying contribution, you'll help make the great programs on this station possible. So reach out to the number on your screen or go online and get your PBS Passport today.
With 37,058 votes now counted, or 43.7% of registered voters, there have been some significant changes from the last election report. And the race for county clerk, recorder, registrar of voters, Juan Pablo Cervantes received 56.1%, while Tiffany Hunt Nielsen received 43.9%. In the race for 2 seats on the Arcata City Council, Meredith Matthews received 34.82%, while Kimberly White received 33.39%. I do believe that's going to make an all-women city council. In the 2 competitive seats for Eureka City Council, G. Mario Fernandez received 52.37% in the race for Ward 3, while John Fullerton received 47.63%. This represents a flip from the last report, where Fullerton was running ahead at the time. He is now losing. In Ward 5, Renee Contreras-Deloach received 52.36% of the vote, while Nicholas Cole received 47.64%. Lastly, Measure M, a proposal to fly an Earth flag above others in the city of Arcata. That measure appeals to have failed narrowly. 50.6% voted no, while 49.4% voted yes. This also represents a flip in results from the last report, and one of our crew members said that when Mars is colonized, our Earth nativity will be much more a point of pride in our politics. So keep that in your hat. Salmon in the Klamath River Basin just received major and much-needed help from the federal government this week. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission voted to clear the way for the removal of 4 dams on the Klamath River, a change that will kick off a massive river restoration effort. The removal of these dams represents a major win for environmentalists, local native tribes, the fishing communities up and down the coast, and the actual fish themselves, who have long suffered under the burden of having to navigate past these dams in their effort to migrate upstream and lay eggs. North Coast Congressman Jared Huffman applauded the decision, crediting years of hard work for the development. Quote, FERC's decision to retire Pacific Corp's dams is the result of years of difficult work by our dedicated North Coast tribes, conservationists, the leadership of California and Oregon, and members of Congress, Huffman said. Poor conditions on the Klamath River have caused substantial harm to tribal communities, commercial and sport fishermen, and the economies of California and Oregon. Huffman pointed out that other dam removal projects in the West have seen dramatic beneficial responses for fisheries and wildlife, and the Klamath River has tremendous potential to recover and rebuild as this work is done. FERC Chairman Richard Glick commented on the move at the head of this week's meeting.
The last time there was a project that was approved for decommissioning and removal of the dams was about 10 years ago. But you know, a lot of these projects were licensed a number of years back when there wasn't as much focus on environmental issues. And some of these projects have a significant impact on the environment, a significant impact on fish and other wildlife. And so when we're going through that, when companies are contemplating going through the relicensing process, I think people recognize that now that we have greater information and different laws and so on, that sometimes these relicensing processes can be rather expensive. And so I think in some cases, licensees are saying, well, it's cost prohibitive to continue on with the project. It makes more sense to do what I think is being done in this particular case. Now, in this case, the Commission's finding that the dam removals make sense in large part as it relates to, again, as I mentioned earlier, fish and wildlife protection. I think also that there's a number of, there's a discussion in the order regarding the impact on tribes and the ability for tribes to be able to essentially have their practices and traditions improved as it relates to water quality issues, fisheries, and other resources. I think it's a very important issue. A number of years back, I don't think the Commission necessarily spent a lot of time thinking about the impact of our decisions on tribes, and I think that's a very important element that I think is in today's order and a number of our orders recently. I think that's I think for good. I think we're making progress on that front. Still ways to go, but we're making the right progress there. So anyway, I want to thank the Commission staff. That I know this has been a long time coming, this order. I want to thank Commission staff for working so hard on this particular order.
The order allows the Klamath River Renewal Corporation, which is a nonprofit group that will lead the dam removal effort, and the states of California and Oregon to take over PacifiCorp's license for the purpose of demolishing the dams. Construction crews will begin preparing the area for dam removal in early 2023 and will remove the Copco 2 dam next year. The remaining dams will all be removed in 2024. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned, stay informed, and catch our podcasts on any of your major podcast platforms.
Hi, my name's Joyce Houston, and I'm a KEEP member. Why am I a KEEP member? Because I love the programming. The spectrum of shows on KEEP TV is tantalizing and stimulating. And more and more shows are being produced here locally for our local audience. Now is a great time for you to become a member if you aren't already. All you have to do is go to KEEP's website, keep.org, or you could give them a call, or you could just send them a check. Any of that would be appreciated. I love KEEP so much, I watch it every day. There is always something on that I can see and learn something about. There's so many places to look. So please, become a member today. And thank you.